First, I got to tell you something terrible that happened to me years ago. My fifth grade teacher was mean. I'm not going to tell you her name because I don't do math and I don't know how old she was then. She may still be alive, so I'm not. But I'm going to tell you, she was a special lady. She was a daughter of a retired Army something, so maybe it's the Army's fault. Oh, just kidding. But she was a special lady, and one day she told me, she looked at me and she said, "Blake Smith, you take your desk and you go sit in the hall and finish your work." And let me tell you why she did that. Because we're all sitting in class and we're writing a story of some kind. Who knows? Who cares? It was fifth grade. No, I'm kidding. Work hard in fifth grade. And I, being the genius that I am, I'm just going to tell you all this part, but don't make fun of me. Don't laugh. I forgot how to spell a word. Now, I can't spell anything. Well, A-N-Y, no, never mind. But on this particular day, I was sitting there and we were writing this story, and I forgot how to spell the word of. I asked you not to laugh. Now, of course, I know that the word is O-F. That's it. But in my head, I kept writing O-V-E, and that didn't look right. You know, it's like of-in. It's of. It's the first part of oven. But so what I started doing, I figured I didn't want to turn in this paper with a word misspelled. So I started asking the people around me, how do you spell of? And of course, they reacted like many of you. They simply laughed at me. No one would tell me how to spell it. And I was actually a little in a desperate situation in my own little, fifth grade heart. And then it became a little ruckus in my area and resulted in her sending me to the hallway to finish my paper. And I tell you what, when my fifth grade self was offended that I would be so ill-treated at my moment of greatest need, but my 20-something-year-old self looks at that same story and realizes the reason she did that is because that was far from the first time I had caused a disruption in my area. And it was amazing that she took the patience that she did, but the moment came when I was causing a distraction and I just had to be judged. I had to be kicked out, and I really deserved it. Maybe not that time, but there was plenty of times I did, and it was building up. What we're going to look at today, though, in the life of the Lord Jesus is a situation where He is going to be much more ill-treated than I have ever been in my entire life. And yet, we will have to keep in the forefront of our minds that He's never done a single thing to deserve any of it. So when we want to think about injustice and we want to think about things not going the way we want them to go, remember, we rarely get what's coming to us. But what He got, He did not deserve. But He did and suffered and died. Why? Because He loves us. And that is the theme behind what we'll look at today. Let me read our passage and we'll do some work and we'll get going here. Matthew chapter 26, beginning in verse 57, reading down through 68. Bible says, "Then those who had seized Jesus led Him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. And Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, sat down with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priest and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they might put Him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last two came forward and said, 'This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days.' And the high priest stood up and said, 'Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?' But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, 'I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God.' Jesus said to him, 'You've said so. But I tell you, from now on you'll see the Son of Man seated on the right hand of power, coming in the clouds of heaven.' Then the high priest tore his robe and said, 'Well, he has uttered blasphemy. What further witness do we need? You've heard this blasphemy. What is your judgment?' And they answered, 'He deserves death.'" He deserves death. Okay. Then they spit in His face. They struck Him. Some slapped Him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?" This move towards the cross is a terrible moment in the life of all those. It's a terrible life that is our whole situation that developed back in that day, and this is Even the Jewish people don't like to even mention this sort of thing took place. But really what I've kind of titled it, and the way I've thought about it this week, is that it's a bad trial. As he's here being put on trial before the leaders in Jerusalem. And it's really a bad trial, and it's a bad trial in two senses. It's a bad trial in one because it's really just a bad situation. He's being treated terribly. He's enduring things. He doesn't deserve any of this. It's terrible. But it's also a bad trial, and the way I want to look at it today, and I want to give you hopefully some insights on it, is it's a bad trial because everything that took place here is illegal in their own law. Everything they did to Jesus throughout this entire picture is actually illegal. So we're going to look at an illegal arrest, an illegal trial, and then illegal treatment. Let me show you first this illegal arrest. It says in verse 57, and you've been with us the last few weeks, or if you're familiar with the Gospel of Matthew, you know this is coming on the heels of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, intense, hours-long prayer session where he sweats blood, but he submits to the will of God. And then here comes Judas leading the band of soldiers and everybody to come arrest him. And now they've come, and it says in verse 37, they seized him and they led him to Caiaphas, the high priest. So he's bound in the garden. He's taken in arrest. Yet, if you notice, there's nowhere any charges have been stated. Now, they don't have Miranda rights and like we do today, but what they did require, their law did require, you couldn't just go arrest somebody and try to figure out what the charges were going to be later. You actually needed a charge to arrest somebody. I can't just go to Craig and put handcuffs on him, drag him out of here, and then ask him a bunch of questions and figure out what he's actually done wrong and then charge him with that later. That's illegal. If you notice one little aside here, verse 58 is, if it wasn't heartbreaking, it's almost comical. And Peter was following with him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest. He goes inside, he sits down to see the end. Now, come back next week when Pastor Josh is going to pick up Peter's denial next week. He's going to lead us in the study next Sunday. But one little thing I want to show you about Peter here in this moment. If you remember Peter, he was the one who in verse 33 of this same chapter said that he would go to death for Jesus. And in verse 35, and he said, I'm never going to, all these others going to leave you. I'm never going to leave you. And then the description is, and they all fled. We love Peter. He has a great heart. And even when the moment came when they came to arrest Jesus in verse 51, he took his little sword out and he swung it best he could at somebody and he cut off a dude's ear. Now, luckily, Jesus healed it and there was no further escalation of the situation. But Peter, he's doing the best he can. And now it tells us that he's following along at a distance behind all this. He's keeping an eye on it, but he doesn't want to get close enough to be identified with Jesus. And as one commentator put it, he's caught somewhere between courage and cowardice. And I like that description because I'm afraid that describes many Christians. When we get together here and we get together in the house and everything's safe in here and we can all believe in God in here and we're not going to have any trouble saying the name of Jesus in here and singing all the great songs about Jesus in here and telling everybody how great Jesus is in here. But when we leave this room, are you as just excited as you were in here, or are you, like me many times, more than I'd like to admit, caught between courage and cowardice? Do you want to remember how good Jesus is, but only do it at a distance, whereas you won't actually be identified with him, and then maybe somebody may make fun of you? Bless your little heart. Where are you? Again, Peter still, he also doesn't understand the big picture that's going on here, but he will. And I'm not going to say any more because I tend to jump all over what Pastor Josh intends to say next time. So I'm going to hush, buddy. That's going to be for you next week. So come back for that. The illegal arrest. Now we're going to look at the illegal trial. This is a somewhat longer section, verse 59, and it's going to take us through verse 66. But before we do that, we actually have to flip over to John's gospel to get the full account of what actually happened. So, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it's 4 accounts, it's 4 descriptions, all of the life of Jesus. So in order to get the full picture, you read all 4, and then you can draw a composite of what happened. So he was here arrested, as verse 57 says, and taken to Caiaphas. But if we flip over to John 18, what we'll find out is, through the full picture, is that he was actually taken to a man named Annas first. John 18, beginning in verse 12 and 13, says this: So the band of soldiers, with their captain and the officers of the Jews, arrested Jesus, bound him, and first, verse 13 says, they led him to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Let me tell you what's significant about this. This man, and we've heard these two names, Annas and Caiaphas. These men were both high priests in Israel. Annas was the high priest for a long time, and he had three sons and a son-in-law, Caiaphas. He was sort of the godfather behind the whole ordeal. Annas was the man really in charge, the power behind the throne, so to speak. Yet, Rome took Caiaphas and put him in charge because, if you didn't know this, political people like to put people in power they can control. And so that's why Caiaphas was installed by Rome to be high priest when truly Annas should have been. So what you can tell that because he's actually the first one they take him to. When they arrest Jesus, you actually take him to the real boss first. You see what I'm saying? So they take him to Annas. And then we skip down over to verse 19 in John 18. And it says, the high priest, that's Annas, then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. And Jesus answered him, I've spoken openly to the world. I've always taught in the synagogues. I've taught in the temple where Jews were all gathered together. I have said nothing in secret, so why do you ask me? What he's saying is, you're questioning me about my teaching. He's questioning Jesus about how he taught, what are the things he said, and he's trying to find him guilty of something. And Jesus said, I did it all in public. Why are you asking me? Go ask those who heard what I said. Verse 22 says, when he said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand. Well, he didn't like the way Jesus was talking to the high priest, so he reached over and slapped him. You know, when you're talking down to your mama and your daddy just reaches back and gets your attention. That's kind of the picture. Although he's doing it to Jesus. Now look at Jesus' answer in verse 23. He said, wait, if what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I'm saying is right, why do you strike me? Jesus is being treated illegally here. Once Annas realizes there's nothing he can do, verse 24 says he sends him back to Caiaphas. Then fine. I'm through with you. I'm not going to get any more into that, right? I'm going to send you on to Caiaphas. He's the official high priest, and then that'll bring us back to Matthew. So what we have here is Caiaphas the high priest, verse 57 again back in Matthew. I know we're jumping around, but just hang in there. It's all going to make sense in a minute. So they seize Jesus, they take him to Caiaphas, and they says they also have the scribes and the elders have gathered together. Now what you got to realize, it's a group called the Sanhedrin, or Sanhedrin, depending on if you're a potato or a potato person. And it's a group of 70 men that were the ruling class of the area. It was 70 men plus the high priest made 71, so there's always an odd number, and they could have a vote, and that sort of tiebreaker vote, stuff like that. So he's gathered this group together. They've all gathered together because they hate Jesus, quite frankly, because he is stealing political power from them. He's stealing influence. He's declaring, they think this guy's saying he's the Messiah, and he wants to rule, and we want to rule, and power doesn't like to give up power. So they've gathered together. But what if you notice, they gathered together in the home of Caiaphas, the high priest, and all of this is taking place somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Now you say, well, thank you for all those details. What does that have to do with anything? Well, what it means is this is an illegal trial. Everything they do tonight in this whole setting is illegal. They've arrested him illegally. They've slapped him, taken him to Annas, and had him slapped illegally. Now they're actually putting him to trial that is convened at night, which is illegal by law. Trial had to be done during the day, and trial had to be done in the temple area. It had to be public. It couldn't be private. It couldn't be this way. And yet this is where they've brought Jesus because they have the end in mind. They don't have justice in mind. It even says here that Matthew tells us that they were seeking false testimony against Jesus, verse 59, that they might put him to death. Now that's terrible to think about. That Jesus has, remember, through all this, done nothing wrong, never one thing. Yet all these people gathered together are intent on one purpose, for him to say one thing wrong or find somebody who will claim something so they can kill him. And it's all completely on an innocent man. It's also a very big deal. It's noticed here that it does say they're seeking false testimony, but they found none. Many witnesses came forward. One thing you've got to notice that if you flip over, and you don't have to flip if you don't, this is a lot of flipping today, I understand, but over in Deuteronomy 19, Moses gave the law regarding witnesses. And it's a very big deal to be a witness in Israel against somebody. He actually, let me read a piece of it here for you. Deuteronomy 19, beginning in verse 15, says, "A single witness shall not suffice against any person for any crime or any wrong committed with any offense they've committed." So you can't just have one person say you did something and that be good enough to sentence you to death, okay? Hey, that's a good thing. That's good news. "Only on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 shall a charge be established. If a malicious witness arises to accuse a person of wrongdoing, then both parties dispute shall appear before the Lord, the priest and the judges who were in the office those days. The judge shall inquire diligently, and if the witness," this is important, this is another thing they didn't do, "if the witnesses are found to be a false witness and accuse the brother falsely, then you shall do to them as he's meant to do to his brother." What that means is, if I am convinced that Harold killed a guy, and I go and I declare that I saw it, and I know that Harold killed a guy, and it's all turned out to be a lie just because I got something against Harold, guess what happens to me? Death penalty. Because it's very serious to be a false witness. It ruins justice. Too bad today, people seemingly can get on a stand and just lie all day and nothing seems to happen. That's not God's way. Bearing false witness, even one of the 10, it's a big deal. And to think all these people gather together and they're doing all this, they're having this illegal trial in this illegal setting with all these illegal people that keep trying to give false witness. The boldness of people, heartbreaking. And then you find a half-truth. It says 2 came forward, the end of verse 60, picking up into 61. It says, "At last 2 came forward, and they said, well, hey, we got something we heard him say. We heard him say that I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days." That's the testimony they gave. Now, if you first read that, you think, well, he did say that, right? Didn't Jesus say something about, I'll raise up the temple, destroying the temple, rebuild? Wait, this sounds familiar. I guess they're right. He said that I am able to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well, that's not what he said. If you flip over, and you don't have to flip, just hang out there. John 2, verse 19. This is Jesus' actual words. Jesus said, "If you destroy this temple, in 3 days I'll raise it up." They said that Jesus said he was going to destroy the temple. They were accusing him of being one who said he could attack and destroy the setting of God's worship and then in 3 days build it up. But they twisted his very words. Understand that if you're going to give a statement about somebody else, be it in a legal sense or be it in gossip, get it right. If you don't, you're just lying. And we don't want to be liars, right? We don't want to do that. So they come along, they twist his words, they get it really a half-truth. You know what a half-truth is, right? It's a false truth. The high priest in verse 62 stood up and said, "Have you no answer to make? What is it these men testify against you?" They want Jesus to make an appeal. They want Jesus then to speak on his own behalf. They want Jesus to defend himself. Now, another part of the illegal trial is Jesus has no attorney to represent him. Yet they ask him, "Are you going to speak for yourself?" And he gives no answer. And you wonder, how in the world would he not give any answer? Well, the funny thing about this is God's not surprised by any of this, and he's been saying repeatedly that all this is taking place so that Scripture must be fulfilled. What Scripture could it be? Well, it's Isaiah 53 in verse 7 that says this. Look at how the specificity with which God, 500 years ahead of time, could speak to this very thing. "He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, like a sheep before its shears is silent, he did not open his mouth." God's got this in control. He's not surprised by anything that's taking place. This entire illegal event is no surprise to him. He was prepared for it. He knew it was coming. So what do we do then? Well, let's see what else he says. Caiaphas doesn't like this. He needs Jesus to say something he doesn't like so he can find him guilty. So then he declares this in verse 63, "I adjure you by the living God." Now he's saying you are under oath now, placed under oath of God by me. It's now you swear to God. Are you the Christ? Are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God? So he then pins Jesus. His idea is to pin him, and he wants Jesus to say yes, which would be the truth, but to him then he could use it against him and he could have him killed for claiming to be the Messiah. The trouble is with him, though, is he doesn't want a yes so that he can then believe in Jesus and be saved. And so I think many in the world, and maybe us as well, sometimes we come to God and we want to know the truth of Him, but we don't really want it because we want to believe. We just want to know more about Him so we can criticize. He just wanted Jesus to say something so that He could pin him on, or pin something on Him. He wasn't asking this question with sincerity, wanting to know, hey, are you the Christ? And then Jesus could say, I am the Christ, and then they could all worship together and be happy. If you remember back in John chapter 4, the Samaritan woman was honestly looking for the Messiah, and to her, Jesus said, I am He. This man, Jesus, isn't going to do that because He knows why He's asking the question. Jesus answers, verse 64, well, you've said so. He said, bud, those are your words. He says this, but I tell you this, from now on you're going to see the Son of Man. That's Jesus' favorite term for Himself. That's a quotation from Daniel chapter 7. You're going to see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Now, he thinks he's got Him here. He's got just what he wanted. He's got Him guilty. He's done said something now. And look at Caiaphas. He's going to just explode, and he's going to have all the pomp and circumstance of an idiot. Verse 65, it says, the high priest tore his robes. Now, this developed into a display of blasphemy. That was their prescribed response to blasphemy, but actually it was supposed to be a response to mourning. But they weren't doing that. They're not heartbroken over God's name being dragged through the mud or anything like that. He feels like he's finally got what he wants. So he tears his robes and he declares, he has uttered blasphemy. What further witness do we need? You've heard this blasphemy. Now what's your judgment? He asked the group of 70 gathered there. Interestingly enough, one more tidbit about the illegality of this whole proceeding is in that day you could not self-incriminate with your own words. Just something interesting. So Jesus couldn't actually have made himself guilty. Even if he did utter blasphemy, it wouldn't make him guilty because it needed witnesses to be done. So they said, what is your judgment? And the declaration from the group is heartbreaking because remember, Jesus is an innocent man. All we know about his life is that he lived it completely in submission to God the Father, helping people, healing people, teaching people, showing people the right way, loving people, loving children, providing for thousands. That's the Jesus we know, the Jesus we love. And yet, what is your judgment? They answered, he deserves death. And it's sad in that regard, but it's ironic because that's exactly what he had to experience and what he was going to experience to die for our sins, yours and mine. Sad that it had to be that way, but the amount of love shown is outstanding. Lastly, illegal treatment. I'll show you this quickly. Verse 67 says, then they spit on his face. They struck him. Some slapped him. This is illegal treatment. This is not how the law allowed them to treat someone who was even convicted of a crime. Everything they did was illegal. The moment they think they got him, their reaction is to, think about it. Have you ever even spit on somebody? That's not something you commonly do. How awful do you have to feel about someone to even do that? Yet it says they spit on him, they slapped him, they struck him. The end of verse 67 and 68 says, some slapped him, and then they said, hey, prophesy to us who slapped you. If you go to Mark 14's version of this, Mark tells us that they actually put a blindfold on him and were taking turns slapping him, saying, hey, who's hitting you? Who's hitting you? That's the treatment Jesus endured. And realize that this is all unfolding according to God's plan. If we go back to Isaiah, let me read Isaiah 50 and verse 6 to you very quickly. See if this sounds familiar to something you've recently heard. I give my back to those who strike. I give my cheeks to those who pull out my beard. I hid not my face from disgrace and from spitting. God's not surprised by this, although it is a heartbreaking event. But also, not only is God not surprised by it, but every one of these people are responsible for their own actions. Just because God knows what's coming doesn't mean we're free with our sin. We're still guilty of it. But what God is busy doing is fixing the problem that we caused by that very sin. So what do we do with all this? I know that's a lot of information real quick. Let me give it to you. I guarantee it'll be quick. 4 quick ideas. What we can do with all this. Because I know this is a lot. You probably all feel like you need some sort of judicial degree after hearing all that. But the first thing I want you to notice, got to remember through all of this, Christ is completely innocent. Unlike us, he's mistreated and doesn't deserve a single minute of it. However, if we walk closely enough with Him, we live closely enough in love with Him, we will suffer mistreatment as well. That's what the Bible promises. So let me tell you, if that is the case, if you are suffering for the cause of Christ, suffer well and endure, just like Jesus. And a second part that's a piece to that, don't suffer because of your own fault. Pray to God that He doesn't let your stupidity cause you to suffer needlessly. Because I know too much of my suffering has been my fault, not in the name of Jesus. Number 3, though, anything we must endure, anything we must go through, anything, no matter how bad it may be, for the cause of Christ, is temporary. It's temporary. Let me read you this. Maybe this is a passage you're familiar with. I hope it is. If not, you should memorize this one. Romans 8:18. Apostle Paul writes, "For I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worthy comparison with the glory that is to be revealed." There's some hard days. We go through some hard stuff. It's temporary, people. Let's suffer well. Let's endure well in God's name. And then last, number 4, if you ask him the big question like I did studying this week, all this he went through, why? At any moment, this could have ended. At any moment, he snaps his fingers, all these people just cease to exist. There's nothing to it. Why did he endure all this? And it's not only going to ramp up after this, he's eventually going to be hung on the cross and die. Why? And it's one word, isn't it? It's love. Jesus had love of his Father, and he had love of us. And he had love of the very people who were spitting and slapping his face. And because of the love he felt for them, the love he feels for us, the love he feels for every person that's ever lived, he endures this and much worse. He goes to a cross and he dies because he loves. Are we willing to endure anything for the cause of love? Are we willing to be inconvenienced in order to love somebody else? Hard to fathom the kind of love Jesus has for us. Amen? But it is the love God has for you. It's the love he has for every single person. Even those people you don't like, guess what? He loves them. So you should too. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you that your word gives us seemingly more than we can take in. Even the preparation and delivery of this today is still overwhelming. Get it all straight in my head, Lord. How could you? I think one person in that situation comes at me, and I don't think I can tolerate it. Jesus, thank you that your love drives you to do the unexpected. That the love you have for people drives you to be tolerable of what we consider intolerable. Lord, thank you that you tolerate me. Lord, I thank you for that 5th grade teacher. Because I deserved what I got. But Lord, I thank you for your Holy Spirit that convicted me of sin and continues to convict. Thank you of your Son that died on a cross to make a way for me to believe in you. And he got out of the ground 3 days later. His resurrection proved it was all true. Lord, I just ask if there's somebody in the house today that doesn't know you as Savior, that maybe today would be the day that changed. And they would ask you to forgive them of their sins, that you be their Savior and be their Lord. And they become brothers and sisters with us, and we spend eternity with you. And then we can truly all say that the sufferings of this age are temporary, not worthy to be compared with just how good it's going to be. Lord, have your way in this time of invitation. Thank you for Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.